about the security zone and its detrimental effects on sports and recreation, particularly in the marine environment. And I believe that this probably illustrates it as well as many voices that I've heard in Newport and Bristol County about the concerns they may have. Let me close by saying there was testimony earlier about the cruise ship market. We are very excited about the 60 cruise ships coming this year. We stand to set a new record. To date, I've not been able to get a clear understanding about how this safety zone will affect the cruise ships per se. We've reached out to Coast Guard officials, we've reached out to others, and there is no written policy here, how long they will have to shut down to service cruise ships. That unknown also concerns our board of directors and those people. There is no directive. There was comments earlier about the ease of the Black Falcon terminal being outside that security zone. What we're seeking as an answer is, will a cruise ship have to shut down for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, or longer? Will the cruise ship be asked to move? These are questions that we are still seeking answers for, and thus still have concerns. So I'd agree with everything that previous speakers said, including John Rodman. I deleted about half of my speech because he did such a great job of delivering that. But I would say that on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Newport and Bristol County Convention and Visitors Bureau, we stand opposed to the location of the LNG terminal in Mount Hope Bay. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Mr. Smith. And I do appreciate the fact, and I appreciate that you abbreviated your comments. That will happen as we move on, that a lot of the points have been taken, and so if I think you can just say OPFIT or IBID, which I learned when I was in school, just citing the former speaker, and that will incorporate it by reference. But again, thank you very much, and I appreciate your coming.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I want to acknowledge that Senator Joshua Miller from Cranston has joined us on the dais. The next person I'm going to ask to come forward is Dr. Patrick Baroche. And Doctor, I understand that you are extraordinarily knowledgeable in the area of earthquakes. I'm going to ask you if you'll be kind enough to give us the shorter layman's version of the report. I know you're making a submission here so that we just have that comprehension, perhaps without the depth that you might give if we're going to be tested on it in the future.
Yes, I and Dr. Reinhard Froelich, formerly of URI, are the resident experts on the faults and earthquakes in the area by the expedient of outliving our coworkers. That helps. Yeah. But I got interested and involved in this a number of years ago when I reviewed Weaver's Cove's work on Mount Hope Bay and found no reference to fault activity, any local earthquakes. In fact, of the numerous faults, only one was mentioned, and the information written about that was incorrect. That despite their numerous statements that they've done thorough studies, I have been unable to locate any of these. Now, as a background, I had formulated the hazard methodology for the U.S. Geological Survey before for earthquake hazards, and was brought to New England as a fault expert by the USGS until they closed their office here. Then I ran a program for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission over the Northeast United States to evaluate the earthquake hazard. And part of that program, we identified Narragansett Bay as a particular active area and involved a few professors from URI and graduate students, and we began studies. And one of the particular faults on this was the Watch Hill fault that comes out of the ocean through Watch Hill, all the way across the bay, through the waste of Prudence Island, and right on up through Fall River. And this is a young fault. It's of a class of faults that Lamont Doherty Laboratory of Columbia University considers quite dangerous. And they've been lobbying to have lots of research done on these near New York. This particular fault is the only one that Weaver Cove shows. The one goes northeast across the bay. It goes right under where they are planning to build their very large LNG tank on the shore in Fall River. And there are recorded small earthquakes around in that spot. They have made no comments on these. I had been involved in an underground oil storage tank investigation east of there in Freetown, where we were drilling into the same fault, and a company decided to leave the exploration and not build the facility, and I believe it's because of that fault. Now, we've also investigated and found, well, there are over 30 known faults that enter Mount Hope Bay from the sides. Some of the youngest faults in New England can be seen on the east side of Bristol. You walk up and kick them. There are dozens of reports on these. Weaver Cove hasn't mentioned any of them, or they're very well hidden. In 2002, one of the earthquakes we were able to get a good center on south of the Saconnet Bridge. You could identify the fault that it was on. So we could definitely say the one fault on the south edge of the bay is active. There was an earlier study by people from URI in '76. We're able to get a nice point on the earthquake that coincides with the north trending faults that go right across into Mount Hope Bay, close to where their unloading facilities are located. But there's a whole string of these small earthquakes on the east side of the bay, besides ones around the whole bay, coming down from Swansea down the Saconnet River. And so every few years one of these pops up. Sometimes there's a little one every year. They're very shallow, unusually shallow for earthquakes, make a lot of noise, but this means they'll have a larger impact because they're closer to the surface. Now, in normally a facility like LNG, we used to call a critical facility, meaning it's very dangerous, like nuclear power plants, large faults, large dams. They were applying it also to radioactive waste sites, even underground oil storage when there was a federal search for oil storage in New England. The critical facilities then, they require that they not be on an active fault. This is a separate rule. And there are many sites in New England where the sites have been turned down because there was evidence of potential active faulting. I've been involved in several of these. You have the evidence, the present evidence in Mount Hope Bay is better than some of these sites that have been turned down. But primarily, there just has been no investigation. They haven't done work for these. And so you're left with the matter that you're just hoping that the values for earthquakes that they have used are very generalized values that have been summarized by somebody in Denver, probably never been in Rhode Island. And it's something akin to, say, the average house price of New England, without regards to any local conditions or local towns. And that has nothing to do with being on an active fault or the problems with a local earthquake that might be right under your facility. Worked on this too with the Corps of Engineers and with the Department of Energy, and we consider this quite reasonable, credible earthquake of 5.5 magnitude could occur in the bay.